Shalom everyone, and welcome to Smoking Truth TV. This is show number 11, and the title for today's show is Sherlock Holmes and the Case of the Mystery Names. My word, have I really made it to show 11? Time does really fly by these days, doesn't it? Sorry for the delay on this video. I found it a little tricky to explain. You know what it's like when you have a lot of information in your head but have trouble putting it into words. Just to give you the heads up, even though we're going to be looking at the characters in this fictional novel, we are also going to be looking at a ton of other things as well. And as always, don't just listen to me and believe what I'm saying, as this is something you will need to diligently search out for yourselves. To be honest, there is so much information regarding these topics that I'm going to be talking about today that I myself am still learning. Anyway, let's get started on today's show, but before we do, let me just lay down a little groundwork first. I mentioned at the end of my last video, this one will involve some simple English gematria, where we assign a number to each letter all the way through our given 26-letter alphabet, or we could say the 666 satanic alphabet made by the creepy 33 group who likes to call themselves Freemasons or Jesuits. As most of you may know, the main logo the Freemasons like to display is the old square and compass with the letter G in the middle, telling you in plain sight just how the world is designed. The hinge at the top, or the little circle at the top, represents the pole star Polaris, and the letter G, or the number 7, represents the god they worship. Some of you may be thinking, but smoking truth, surely that's a good thing because they are showing us the truth in plain sight, right? Well, let's just take a look at what god they worship, shall we? So according to this man here, going by the name of General Albert Pike, who was also a 33rd degree Freemason, had this to say: "That which we must say to the crowd is, we worship God, but it is the God that one adores without superstition. To you, Sovereign Grand Inspectors General, we say this, that you may repeat it to the brethren of the 32nd, 31st and 30th degrees. The Masonic religion should be, by all of us initiates of the high degrees, maintained in the purity of the Luciferian doctrine. If Lucifer were not God, would Adonai Jesus spread false and harmful statements about him?" And he says here at the end, yes, Lucifer is God. This statement can be found on page 588 of this book here. You will have to forgive me for not reading this out, but if I did, I would probably just end up butchering the pronunciation. We can also see the same old symbolism in this logo too. Many of us have seen this on display over the years, and even more so between the years of 2019 and the present. And the reason being is because this is the same symbol as the common Freemasons logo, just a bit more encoded. We see from the letters and the numbers in this logo being E to R, telling us the same thing as in Lucifer is God. Because if we counted the letter E as 5 and add 2, we would end up with 7. And like I just mentioned with the Freemasons, the number 7 equals to the letter G, meaning God. And if we now look at the letter R, you would notice it equals to the number 18. Now you tell me, is it a coincidence that 6 plus 6 plus 6 equals to 18? The crown is also used as a symbol as it represents a firmament or dome, and the cross at the top symbolises again the pole star Polaris. I will just throw this picture in as well to back up some of what I'm saying with the symbol being connected to Freemasonry. And here we also see Princess Elizabeth being initiated into a pagan druid ceremony. Looking at King Charles' coronation invitations, we can see the royal family still practice these druid pagan religions today by showing us the green man symbolism. Anyway, I don't want to get sidetracked, but I will just say you may want to research the history behind the green man. So from what we have learnt so far, are you now beginning to see why some people call the English language the satanic language, and also how it is used to spellcast? To know when something is being used to deliberately spellcast, we would use anagrams to decipher them. Yes, I know this intro is a bit longer than normal, but I'm trying to lay the groundwork for the foundations of this video, as some people may not know much about what I'm going to be talking about, and I'm trying to lay it down as simple as I can so some of you don't get lost in the Kool-Aid. Here is an interesting list of words I stumbled across, and as we can see, the phrases and words have the rearranged words or phrases next to them. I found some of these fascinating, like the word astronomer, translated as moon starer, or the Morse code, here comes dots. Now this is one of my favourites, the eyes, they see. So we could say ABC is as easy as 1, 2, 3, but then again ABC equals to 33. So you could imagine my surprise when I found out there was a news channel called ABC 33. But when it comes down to the news, we find it is an anagram for north, east, south and west. Also, the word broadcasting means to widely spread, so we could say the news is casting its spells across the four corners of the earth. Anyway, I could go on for hours about all the codes that have been embedded into our natural system by a group of creepy old men, but hopefully I have given you enough background to make what I'm going to be talking about a bit more understandable. And as always, don't believe me or anyone who is telling you that this is 100% true. Instead, what I will say is, when you go looking into it for yourselves, you will soon come to your own conclusions. Just one more thing I'd like to mention before we get started. No, I'm not in some kind of a cult, as it is my understanding that occults make you swear an oath of secrecy to be able to join their creepy little groups, where instead I would rather expose the unfruitful works of darkness. So now we have all that long introduction out of the way, let's get into the subject what you originally clicked on the video for. Sherlock Holmes and the Case of the Mystery Names. Just like every book that deals with investigations, we have to start from the beginning. So let's start with who wrote these books. This man here supporting this goofy moustache is no other than Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Conan Doyle was a Scottish doctor and writer. He was famous because of his stories of Sherlock Holmes. He was supposedly born on May 22nd, 1859 in Edinburgh, Scotland, and says he died July 7th, 1930 in Crowborough, Sussex, England. His occupation was a writer and physician, and he attended the University of Edinburgh. His genre of writing were a mixed bag of detective fiction, fantasy, science fiction, as well as some historical novels and non-fiction. This article reads, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was a writer and doctor, catapulted to fame by his stories featuring the master of logic and deduction, Sherlock Holmes. The enormous success of these detective tales allowed Conan Doyle to give up his medical practice in 1891 and dedicate himself to writing. Well, that was jolly nice of him. I bet his sick patients that he was treating were very proud of him, and as you will see in just a few moments, there is a much darker side to this man. Yup, you've guessed it, as he is referenced here as Bro Arthur Conan Doyle. Here's a statement from yet another Freemason. The highest morality may prove also to be the highest wisdom when the half-told story comes to be finished. Well bro, I bet you didn't think a nobody from the same part of the land you come from would be exposing the rest of your story as smoke and mirrors in just under 100 years. But just to clarify, let's pull up a few more articles on his story of Freemasonry. It says here, Arthur Conan Doyle was initiated on the 26th of January 1887 at the age of 27. Passed on the 23rd of February 1887 and raised on the 23rd of March 1887 in Phoenix Lodge number 257 South Sea, Hampshire. He resigned in 1889 and rejoined in 1902, but finally withdrew in 1911 without having made further progress in the warlock craft. The old One King 911 code, hey? Anyway, let's continue. This article adds, and he made literary references to Freemasonry in his work, especially in the Sherlock Holmes stories. There are various names Mr. Doyle goes by, but he is mainly known by many people as Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, so let's see what words we can get out of his name. the corona heir, and Sudley. Sudley means idealism, intuition, romance, creativity and wisdom. Sudley is also referenced as a sexual naked dance. And we all know how perverted the Freemasons are, but the most important words to take away from this cipher would be the phrase, the corona heir. Now before some of you naysayers jump on the aggressive bandwagon, I'm not talking about a fictional pseudo-virus, but rather a plasmatic discharge of electricity. You know, the real meaning of the word corona? But let's now take a look at King Arthur's sharpest sword, Mr. Sherlock Holmes. As you will notice, there has been many people who have played the character of Sherlock Holmes. Some have been great and some not so great. One strange thing I did come across was, in the present times we're living in now, the actors who have portrayed the character of Sherlock Holmes are the same actors who also play Super Helios heroes in other movies. Even Superman himself has gotten in on the action too. But we're not here to talk about actors. Instead, let's see what Sherlock Holmes is really all about. So the name Sherlock Holmes seems to translate to Lock L's home, and if you were paying attention at the beginning, you would notice that the two letters that are left over are indeed Masonic letters. H equals to the number 33 and the letter R representing the mark of the beast. We're also told often throughout the books, movies and TV series that Sherlock Holmes' address is 221B Baker Street. Now for the ease of this video and also the risk of this video being taken down, I'm going to sidestep the words Baker Street and just focus on the door number. And for those of you who come across this video and have already worked this part out, you will understand why I did so. So this is his door number, as I just mentioned, 221B. So let's now see what this letter and numbers corresponds to. If we were to count the letter B as the number 2 and add it to the number 1, you will soon notice that this address translates to the number 223. But if we was to flip that number around, you will get the numbers 322. Oh, how they love to use mirrors, hey? For those of you that are unaware, 322 is the number for another secret society known as Skull and Bones. That's also run by the Freemasons. As this article explains, what's the significance of the number 322? It continues to say March 22nd and the number 32 are connected to Skull and Bones and the 33rd degree Masons. This is also related to the fact that water freezes at 32 degrees but stays liquid at 33 degrees Fahrenheit. Skull and Bones uses 322 as a day of spiritual warfare. That's the day they do the sacrifice rituals using Geronimo's skull in black magic ceremonies. Let's just throw this in here as well. So the winged serpent Baphomet Trump claimed he was going to get arrested on the 21st of the 3rd, 2023. On Friday the 18th of March, the Observer Donald Trump claims he will be arrested on Tuesday in New York. Criminal case, ex-president makes remarks on Truth Social without any official confirmation. The date of his arrest was meant to take place on the 21st of March 2023. Counting the days as in 2 plus 1 will give you the number 3, and March being the 3rd month will also give you the number 3, giving us the Masonic number of 33, and the year being 2023 again gives us the Skull and Bones number of 322. Just to rub more salt in the wounds, this date, the 21st of March, is also known as the Biblical New Year, as in month 1, day 1. But I'm beginning to digress now, so let's push forward. Next up we have L's prodigal son, or should I say Sherlock's trusted psychic, the one and only Dr. John Watson. Again, just like with Sherlock, there has been many people that have played the part of John Watson throughout our told timeline. And just to add a bit more spice to these told tales, they even go and hire an actor with the last name being Freeman to portray this character. But putting that aside for now, let's see what we can make out of this name, John Watson. If I haven't given away too much already, that is. With the name John Watson, we obviously get the name John, but the meaning of John means to be one with Elohim or Yahweh. The name Watson is divided into two, as in Watt or Watts, meaning electrical. And of course the last part of his name being son, the son of El, or noble apprentice. I found this article interesting, so I thought I'd put this in the video as well. The Watt symbol W is a unit of power or radiance flux in the international systems of units, equals to 1 joule per second, or if we want to get technical about it, 1 kg to M2 to S equals 3. It is used to quantify the rate of energy transfer. The Watt is named in honour of James Watts, 1736 to 1819, an 18th century Scottish inventor, mechanical engineer and chemist who improved the new common engine with his own steam engine in 1776. And for those of you who are wondering, yes, James Watts was a Freemason. As it states here, Brother Watt was initiated into the Glasgow Royal Arch Lodge in 1763. Here is what Wikipedia has to say. He was initiated into the Scottish Freemasonry in the Glasgow Royal Arch Lodge number 77 in 1763. The lodge ceased to exist in 1810. A Masonic lodge was named after him in his hometown of Glasgow, Lodge James Watt number 1215. So I would say Arthur Conan Doyle would have known about this man James Watt and would most probably looked up to him in some regards, and with himself originally being a doctor just gave him a gateway to boost his own ego and come up with the character John Watson. And again here we can see their El God and their free-man son at the door of the headquarters of Skull and Bones. Of course, there is a lot more information that involves the one electrical sun, but let's move on to the next character. Mycroft Holmes is Sherlock Holmes' older brother. His role is working for Her Majesty's Secret Service, and we already know how much they are influenced by the Freemasons, but let's not get sidetracked again. Instead, let's see what his name has to say. So Mycroft Holmes seems not to be an anagram, but rather a word used in Old English pre-7th century and stems from the word maype, meaning the function of the waters. So we could say the waters are El's home, or it could be interpreted as the beast of the sea. Getting quite heavy now, wouldn't you agree? I did do an anagram on his name, and the closest I got to it was El crafts my home. But as you see, we would need the letter A instead of an O. Up next we have the mild-mannered, kind-hearted yet dim-witted Mrs. Hudson. She is Sherlock's housemaid or housekeeper, depending on what version you're reading or watching, played by many characters over the years. But let's now see what we can make out of her name, shall we? The name Mrs. Hudson is broken down into 3 words, being Mrs. Hud Son. Mrs. translates to fail to perceive or understand. Hud means to lack intelligence, displays ignorance and gullibility. The word son could either mean to be a part of the unholy trinity, but most likely in this case the word son could be interpreted as a sun skirt. And as we see here, she couldn't wait to line up and have her photo taken in front of the Grand Lodge of 322. Before we carry on with the last 2 characters, are you beginning to see where all this is heading and what this Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was hiding in his stories? If you haven't, I assure you it will all become clear by the time we reach the end of the video. Anyway, let's move on to the next character. Captain, or Lieutenant Lestrade. As you can probably tell by now, there has been lots of actors that have taken on this role of the bumbling buffoon policeman, who, now let's be honest, couldn't solve a single case if it wasn't for Sherlock, but I guess that's what you get for hiring a man with a low IQ. Anyway, let's get into the character's name before I get sidetracked again. So the name Lestrade is also split into 3 words, being Lee star D. The word Lee is French for the word the. Then we have the next 4 letters as in the word star, and then the last 2 letters being DE or D is Latin for the word remove. so we could say remove the star, but with a little wordplay it could also mean the Death Star. Another interesting thing regarding this name is that it can also be spelled as Lestrade, and in this case you would be able to make the word Astra, and that would lead you down to the phrase Baker of Death, but you would have to put the Zen in the Ka as well to figure that one out. Anyway, I probably said too much on that subject, so let's move on to the last character. Professor Moriarty. As many of you would know, this is Sherlock Holmes' main arch enemy and has the same intelligence as him. To Sherlock and Moriarty, the crimes taking place are just like one big chess game to them, or a battle of the minds, as they battle it out throughout the series. And when we break down his name, we can see why he is called Moriarty. To put it simply, Moriarty means Warrior of the Sea, or Great Navigator. Look, I can't tell for sure if all this is correct, and as far as I'm aware, I haven't seen anybody else break this down before, so I could be missing a few things here or there. But if you have watched any of my videos before, you will know by now that I don't believe in coincidences. I mean, take the new Holmes franchise that kicked off in 2020 called Enola Holmes. I mean, just breaking down those two words gives you L's Home Alone. Another interesting thing about this Enola Holmes is that the main character in this program is an actress called Millie Bobby Brown, and coincidentally happens to believe the earth is flat. I was going to end the video there, but instead I thought I'd give you some more juice that I've managed to squeeze out of this old story. To me, this story all points towards something some of you may have heard of before, called the Carrington event, that's also known as Earth's electronic apocalypse. It says here the Carrington event was the most intense geomagnetic storm in recorded history, peaking from the 1st to the 2nd of September 1859 during solar cycle 10. It created strong auroral displays that were reported worldwide and caused sparking and even fires in multiple telegraph stations. The geomagnetic storm was most likely a result of a coronal mass injection, the Sun colliding with Earth's magnetosphere. As you can probably tell, this is very much based on the fake heliocentric aspect, but it says here it started on the 1st of September 1859. It was observed and recorded independently by British astronomers Richard Christopher Carrington and Richard Hodgson. Sorry, even as I'm reading this I'm thinking Richard Christopher Carrington as in RCC as in 666 and 33, but not only that, Richard Hodgson also happens to be R and H, giving you again 666 and 33. Coincidence, you think? Anyway, let's continue. A geomagnetic storm of this magnitude occurring today would cause widespread electrical disruptions, blackouts and damages due to extended outages of the electrical power grid. This type of event is what's called a CME, or coronal mass injection, and may look something like this. I mean, I can't say for sure as I've never seen one, but this article describes it as the following. A coronal mass injection is a significant injection of the magnetic field and accompanying plasma mass from the Sun's corona into the ether. And this article reads, a large solar storm could knock out the power grid and the internet. It claims if a Carrington event-sized storm happened today, it would be extremely damaging worldwide with outages lasting into the weeks. This article says, are we ready for the next big solar storm? It continues to say the solar flare that came to be known as the Carrington event, named after one of the two astronomers who first described it, despite occurring more than 150 years ago, it still stands as the strongest known geomagnetic storm, even though we lack measurements to say precisely how big it was. So if this was back in 1859 and it also happened 150 years prior to that event, that would also mean that we're well overdue for this kind of event to take place again, and by my math that should have taken place back in 2009. But I understand that there has been incredible pushback in attempts to delay this event from happening, but I don't wish to get sidetracked again, so let's try and figure out when this expected date for this event is due to take place. According to this article, scientists are saying that a deadly solar flare is going to hit 2025. It also says we do however know the average frequency of Carrington level solar storms because they are surprisingly frequent and we can observe them. Luckily, the vast majority of solar flares do not hit Earth. They are most probable at solar maximum, and 2025 is the predicted maximum of solar cycle. Look, just for the record, I don't believe in this mystical mathematical assumptions that we're told regarding the sun, or the claims that the sun is releasing solar flares into the ether that causes this type of event to happen. Instead, I'm being led to believe that this event is a natural one and it happens every 150 years or so, when the balance of this world is upset and unrest. I also believe that everything we see on this beautiful earth is electrical and has a code of its own in some kind of way, and that is why we get electrical discharges, just like a corona discharge. We can see the same thing when we look at things like the plasma ball or the Tesla coil, but what is a corona discharge? According to Wikipedia, a corona discharge is a process which a current flows from an electrode with a high potential into a neutral fluid, usually air, by ionising that fluid so to create a region of plasma around the electrode. The ions generated eventually pass the charge to nearby areas of lower potential, or recombine to form natural gas molecules. Here's what the overview has to say. An electrostatic motor is based on the attraction and propulsion of electric charge. Usually, electrostatic motors are the dual of conventional coil-based motors. They typically require a high voltage power supply, although very small motors employ lower voltage. Conventional electric motors instead employ magnetic attraction and repulsion and require high current at low voltage. In the 1740s and the 1750s, the first electrostatic motors were developed by Andrew Gordon and by Benjamin Franklin. Today, the electrostatic motors find frequent use in the micromechanical MMS system, where their drive voltage are below 100 volts and where moving charge plates are far easier to fabricate than coils and iron cores. Benjamin Franklin, hey, another Freemason. Here is a quick article I found on this occult leader. So it says here, Benjamin Franklin, one of America's founding fathers, was initiated in 1731. Franklin was not only a member, but a master mason. He freely wrote of Freemasons and was at the forefront of bringing the lodge into America. Throughout his work, he was able to bring Freemasonry into the US government by using many of its beliefs in his work. And the other guy we just spoke of, Andrew Gordon? This is a supposed painting of him and his drawing of his electrostatic motor. I mean, you can go and search this fellow up yourselves, but a quick statement on Wikipedia will tell you he was a Scottish monk, physicist, inventor, and he made the first electric motor of his time. With a little more digging, you will get to find out he was also a Catholic priest, and more likely wore a ring similar to this one. Is it just me, but don't you think that the middle of the ring looks like a keyhole? Interesting, hey? Anyway, moving forward, there has been many of these particular electric motors that have been made throughout time, and they are mainly called the corona motor or free electric motors, powering with atmospheric electricity, with one wire spiked into the ground, what we could call earthed, while the other wire is capturing the electricity from the ether, you know, like the phrase, as above, same below. Here is another free energy device. Again, just like the corona motor, these things have been around for a very long time, and as we can see here, Nikola Tesla definitely knew about these devices. It says here on January 9th, 1894, Nikola Tesla was granted a patent, and it was granted for a coil for electromagnets. It states here, features of the coil, effect of mutual relation self-induction exploited, adjustment coil convolutions, formed parts exist so that potential difference is significant to neutralize negative effects. Bifilar coil winding technique. The same coil winding technique can be found at the bottom of what's known as a Van de Graaff generator, and as you can see, when it is powered up and working, you can also see the corona discharge sparking the small wire next to it. Or for a better view on what I'm saying, the free energy from the ether by using a Tesla tower that was also designed off the same tech as the pyramids. Most of you who have watched my previous videos already know my standpoint on the shape of the Earth, and I think this last subject ties in nicely as we begin to wrap things up. Ether force and the magnetic north. The toroidal field of our Earth shows us the same symbol of the phrase as above, same below. Looking at the point of light in the middle could indicate the North Star Polaris, or it could also be a beam of light in the magnetic spectrum. And in fact, our Earth is more likely to look like this, and as you can see, the electrostatics spread through a plane disk through the middle of the toroidal field. Looking at this concept also reminds me of a head of a human. If I was just to put this here, sorry for the finger drawing, but hopefully you'll get what I'm saying. And as you can see, the middle point is the strongest, as in mind. The hue at the top is thought, and the ears for frequency. As we can see by this picture here showing us what's known as the pineal gland. This part of the brain is where your consciousness comes from, or some may say your third eye. Some people even claim this to be your spirit. And if we was to understand that everything is electrostatics and frequencies, we would have a better understanding that the aura of a human has 7 layers, just like it's described with 7 chakras. Even the biblical reference of the 7 layers of the firmament. Another thing I found interesting was the hue of a man's 7 layers can change depending on the state of mind. As we can see here with the difference between living in fear and living in love, showing us this time that the brightest point of light would be the heart of a man. I mean, is it just me, or do all these findings point towards the Vedic Hindu cosmology, like I've mentioned before? But regarding the CME, or the 1859 Carrington event, I drew this sometime in 2020. The CD is meant to represent the coronal discharge. As you may be able to see, that I was starting to look into frequencies at this point too. And if you was to ask me, I believe this kind of event is a natural event that has happened and will continue to keep happening throughout time. I mean, after all, the world and the sky acts as one big timepiece, and the sun and the moon acts as the hour and the minute hands, and this is how we are able to track time. I think I'll close this case, well, for today anyway. I know I went a bit all over the place with this one. Maybe sometime in the future I'll break it all down into separate videos, but hopefully some of the information I've talked about has been helpful to some of you. And please let me know in the comments below if you have any thoughts or ideas on today's topics. This is an ever learning channel after all. And if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to hit the thumbs up. It will help greatly for me to start to gain a bit of traction in the algorithms. Also, if you want to continue with me on my journey in searching for the truth, don't forget to also subscribe for future content. They say a picture can show 1,000 words. Some would say I'm deep in thought, some would say I'm lonely, some would say I'm set apart, some would say I'm depressed. In truth, I am all the above. But not because I have to be, it's because I choose to be. I need to be able to learn knowledge and have understanding to be able to let my light shine on the darkest of days that are to come. I know the truth is out there, and I feel it is our responsibility to keep searching for the truth. Take care out there, brothers and sisters, and I will catch you in the next episode of Smoking Truth TV.